Saira, good morning, dear children. So, this is the continuation of the same lesson, the ancient civilization. This is class 6th, subject social science, part 2 and chapter 4. Now, the Egyptian civilization. So, I have told you the Egyptian civilization flourished on the banks of the river Nile. So, now we are going to understand in detail about the Egyptian civilization. So, Egypt is the first civilization of the ancient world. This civilization took birth on the banks of the river Nile. The Nile is regarded as the longest river in the world, and it is a major north-flowing river in Africa which joins the Mediterranean Sea. If the Nile had not flown through Egypt, it could have been a desert. Thus, Egypt is considered as the gift of Nile. So, the first civilization of the ancient world is the Egyptian civilization. So, Egyptian civilization was the first civilization of the ancient world. So, which is the first civilization? The Egyptian civilization was the first civilization of the ancient world. So, this Egyptian civilization took birth on the banks of the river Nile. I have told you the Egyptian civilization flourished and prospered and became an important civilization because of the river Nile. So, this civilization took part on the banks of the river Nile. So, the Nile is regarded as the longest river in the world. So, which is the longest river in the world? Nile. The Nile is regarded as the longest river in the world. And it is a major north-flowing river in Africa which joins the Mediterranean Sea. It is a major north-flowing river in Africa which joins the Mediterranean Sea. So, if Nile had not flown through Egypt, it could have been a desert. See the importance of the river Nile. So, if the Nile had not flown through Egypt, it could have become a desert. So, Egypt is considered as the gift of Nile. So, Egypt is considered as a gift of Nile, as Nile played a very important role to make this Egyptian civilization flourish and prosper. So, without this Nile, Egypt could have become a desert. So, for this sake, the Egypt is considered as the gift of Nile. Now, you have understood the Egyptian civilization, and now we will understand the political history of Egyptian civilization. So, Egypt witnessed the rise of political dynasties about 5,400 years ago. So, the Egyptian witnessed the rise of political dynasties about 5,400 years ago. The kings of Egypt were called Pharaohs. The kings of Egypt were called Pharaohs. Menes was the first Pharaoh. His capital was Memphis. So, Egypt witnessed the rise of political dynasties about 5,400 years ago. The kings of Egypt were called Pharaohs, and Menes was the first Pharaoh. Pharaoh means the kings of Egypt. They were the kings. So, the kings were called as Pharaoh, and Menes was the first Pharaoh, and his capital was Memphis. His capital was Memphis. So, the kings of Egypt were called Pharaohs, and who was the first Pharaoh? The king means Menes was the first Pharaoh, and his capital was Memphis. Among all the pharaohs after Menes, Khufu, Amenhotep and Thomas were prominent. So among all the pharaohs after Menes, Khufu, Amenhotep and Thomas were very important. So the largest pyramid of Giza is called the Great Pyramid of Khufu, which was built by Khufu. So the largest pyramid of Giza is called the Great Pyramid of Khufu, which was built by King Khufu. So can you see this picture? This is Giza pyramid. This is the largest pyramid. Understood? Can you see this? Thamos was the greatest conqueror among all the later pharaohs. So Thamos, he was the greatest conqueror among all the later kings. And Thamos had a daughter, Hatshepsut, came to power after him and came to be known as the first Empress of the world. Empress of the world. So his daughter Hatshepsut came to power after him, and she was known as the first empress of the world. And about 2300 years ago, Alexander the Great conquered Egypt. About 2300 years ago, Alexander the Great conquered Egypt. And so this is the picture of Hatshepsut. So she was the empress of the empire. Can you see this picture? And Ptolemy was appointed as his representative. So Alexander appointed Ptolemy as his representative. Later Ptolemy declared himself the king of Egypt and established the dynasties of Ptolemies. So as Alexander became the king, then he appointed Ptolemy as his representative. And later Ptolemy declared himself the king of Egypt and he established his own dynasties of Ptolemies. The popular queen Cleopatra was the last ruler of this dynasty. So who was the last ruler of the Egyptian civilization? Cleopatra. She was the last ruler of this dynasty. So Egypt became a province of Rome. So which was the province of Rome? Egypt. Egypt became a province of Rome. And the kings of Egypt were called Pharaohs, and Menes was the first Pharaoh and his capital was Memphis. See, can you see the picture of Cleopatra as she was the last ruler of this dynasty? She was the last ruler. She is called Cleopatra and she was the daughter of Thomas, who was the last ruler of this dynasty. And I think you have understood this. So I am going to summarize this whole video. So which is the first civilization of ancient world? Egypt. Egypt is the first civilization of the ancient world. So this civilization took birth on the banks of the river Nile. And the Nile is regarded as the longest river in the world. And if Nile had not flown through Egypt, it could have become a desert. So Egypt is considered as the gift of Nile. The kings of Egypt were called Pharaohs. Menes was the first Pharaoh. His capital was Memphis. So the kings of Egypt were called Pharaohs. And Menes was the first king and his capital was Memphis. Among all the pharaohs after Menes, Khufu, Amenhotep and Thomas were prominent. So after Menes, Khufu, Amenhotep and Thomas were famous. The largest pyramid of Giza is called the Great Pyramid of Khufu, which was built by Khufu. So the largest pyramid of Giza is called the Great Pyramid of Khufu, which was built by Khufu. And Thomas was the greatest conqueror among all the kings. And his daughter Hatshepsut came to power after him and came to be known as the first Empress of the world. Alexander the Great conquered Egypt. Ptolemy was appointed as his representative, and later Ptolemy declared himself the king of Egypt and established the dynasty of Ptolemies. The popular queen Cleopatra was the last ruler of this dynasty. So Egypt became a province of Rome. I think you have understood. So Egyptian civilization was the first civilization of the ancient world. Understood? So Nile is the largest river. And the largest pyramid is the Pyramid of Giza, which was built by Khufu. And the kings of the Egyptian civilization were called as Pharaohs. So the Hatshepsut was the last ruler. Hatshepsut was called as the Empress of the Egyptian civilization, and Cleopatra was the last ruler of this dynasty. Now I think you have understood this. You have understood the Egyptian civilization and their political history. Now I am asking you some of the questions relating to this video. So it will be very easy for you to answer all these questions. So which is the longest river in the world? I have to explain to you which is the longest river in the world and why Egypt is considered as the gift of Nile. Who is a Pharaoh? Name some of the Pharaohs. Who is called as the first Empress of the world? Who conquered Egypt and who was his representative? And who was the last ruler of this dynasty? So it will be very easy if you have understood the video well. Understood? So go through the video, understand, and it will be easy for you to answer all these questions. Thank you. Saira.